theme is living out loud, and all the month of May, light within the shadows. So today's talk, as I said before I introduced Dr. Reverend Ray, his talk, Lights, Camera, Action. Reverend Ray, where are you? There you are.
Hello. How's it going, Gwen?
It's going great. We're so glad you're back with us.
Great to be back. Great to be back. So, hello and welcome, everyone. CSL St. George. Much love and appreciation. So, if we are ready, lights, camera, action. That means, are you ready? Get in your places. And then we move in. So, let's breathe for a moment because today's theme, today's general idea of this means being bold, being brave, being courageous, right? Like this idea of lights, camera, action. So we have to be willing to show up in order to truly engage and participate in this thing called life. And if we're going to show up and we're going to participate, then the question is, what roles are we playing? When you go to see a show on Broadway or when you watch your favorite television show or series or whatever it is that you watch, your favorite film, everyone has a role. And even behind the camera and backstage, everyone has a role. Do we know what our role is? If we were to break this down and I were to ask, what is the role of Centers for Spiritual Living in the world? What is the role of CSL St. George, where you are located? What is the role of Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson, where he lives? What is our role in this thing called life? God incarnating itself in, through, and as us. How are we stewarding that? How are we living in our most authentic and real ways in order to really, and I mean really, show up as this thing? Because there's a deliberate order to the craft of acting or the craft of filmmaking, cinematography. There's a specific reason it's lights, camera, action, and not camera, action, lights, right? It's not go, ready, set, ready, set, go. Lights, camera, action. Treat and move your feet, right? Spiritual mind treatment. There are 5 steps, and it doesn't really matter which order the steps go in because we're anchored in truth. But in this thing called life and how we are showing up, do we know what it means to put into process? There's a vision. There's a lived experience that I desire to have. There's a particular condition that I desire to experience. Whatever that condition is, whatever that experience is, greater health and well-being physically, greater love and compassion in my relationships, greater financial wealth and freedom, whatever it is, equity and justice in the world, whatever it is that lived experience, what is the process that gets us there? Twiddling our metaphysical thumbs does not. There's a process. And in this process, it requires us to be bold and transparent, to be courageous, and to be audacious. Breathe. In the grand scheme of things, and I don't know how many of you have ever, seen the backstage, quote unquote, or the setting of a movie, when the cameras aren't rolling, or, you see behind the camera and you see, the cameras and you see the camera people and you see the person holding the boom and the microphone and you see all these things going on, the makeup person, you see all these things. It's not what you see on screen. And oftentimes we compartmentalize because we have this idea in our minds that certain places mean certain things. And yes, I don't go to the 7-Eleven in order to deposit money unless they have an ATM. I don't go to the 7-Eleven to have a tooth extracted. I go to the dentist for that. So we understand that there are certain places that serve a certain function. Yes, that's not what I'm referring to. What I'm referring to is the manner in which we compartmentalize and think that religious and spiritual things only happen in religious and spiritual places. Well, wait a minute. If God is all there is, circle, circumference, nowhere, center, everywhere, then where is that spot that clearly God is not? Because that's not hallowed ground. That's not holy ground. That's not sacred space. That's not where God resides. So clearly there has to be a spot where God is not. So, whoa, well, we know that that's not accurate. That's not true. So then the same level of mindfulness and peace and clarity that we get from being at CSL St. George, we can get at the bank. We can get at the ER in the hospital. We can get in the dentist office. We can get while sitting in the parking lot of traffic. We can get that calm, centered stillness, that oneness, no matter where we are, because ultimately it's never left us. Breathe and take that in. Let that really sink in. Doesn't matter where we are, God is. So if God is wherever we are, and there are moments when we are not feeling it, where's the disconnect? God is there. God has to be there. Spirit has to be there. So something else is going on that is causing me to not be able to recognize the truth of my being. In the same way that if Star and I go out to lunch and I have, lettuce in my tooth, and Star not wanting to embarrass me, just gives me that look and a wink and a look. Now I'm like, I'm not getting the subtext. I don't get it. Well, I can't see my own face, so I'm not aware that there's something that till I go to the restroom and I look in the mirror, and for whatever reason I smile at myself in the mirror, and I'm like, that's what. So there's some reason, various times, where we're not really able to see our own true selves, even though it's there. My face is there. And unless I, log in and look at my reflection online, because I can't see my face right now, but my face is there. Just because I can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Just because I don't feel God right now doesn't mean God's not there. Just because I don't feel my divine spiritual magnificence right now because I'm grieving doesn't mean it's not there. I am spiritually magnificent at all times, as are you. And there are conditions and situations that happen in this thing called life, on the stage of life, that oftentimes make us forget the truth of who we are. We forget because our focus is elsewhere. We compartmentalize. We go through this process somehow as though, can you truly separate who you are from who you are? Can you separate who you are from who you are? Who we are being impacts always, and in all ways, what we are doing. So see, it doesn't matter, really, it does not matter where we are. We're on stage because we're involved in life. This thing called life is everywhere, all the time. So our question then becomes, rather than thinking about it as whether it's compartmentalized, film or stage, doesn't matter if it's film or stage. That doesn't make any difference. Because the medium through which we are living our lives, the medium through which we are telling our story, the medium through which we are narrating our own life experience and hero's journey is secondary to the meta meaning of the story. And what I mean by that is the meta meaning is what is the significance of what's going on? Not so much what is going on, but what does it mean? Because oftentimes what we do is we judge what we see. We judge what we hear. We judge what people wear. We judge what people say. We judge where people live. We judge what people eat. We judge their political affiliations. We judge their skin color. We judge their sexual. We judge so much. And it's because it's easy to deflect. We're going to get to that a little bit more in a minute. Why is it so easy to deflect? But right here, our invitation is to understand, as it says in John 7:24, judge not according to the appearance. Don't judge a book by its cover, but judge righteously. Judge meaning discern rightly. Don't judge a book by its cover. Discern rightly by opening the book and reading what's inside. Judge righteously, discern accordingly when in community, because technically community means relationship, when in relationship with whoever it is you are having a conversation with. Because how many times have you seen someone with a scowl on their face and we may have judged, oh, well, I'm not going to talk to, Chris today. Looks like Chris is having a bad day. I'm going to leave Chris alone. And then Gwen says, Ray, have you seen Chris today? And I'm like, yeah, he looks like he's mad. And Gwen says, oh, no, he's not mad. He's just got something on his mind. Because, oh, so that was actually the look of contemplation. Oh, I judged it as anger, as leave me alone, versus I'm simply in deep thought. And because of how I judged and refused to go into the meta meaning of what I'm seeing, I chose not to engage in conversation. I chose to stay away from him. That's not fair to him. It's not fair to me. So, our invitation in this whole process, discern rightly, not judging by appearance. Eckhart Tolle says, it's not what you do, but how you do what you do that determines whether you are fulfilling your destiny. And how you do what you do is determined by your state of consciousness. State of consciousness. Pause for a Reverend Ray remix. State of consciousness, let's break it down to a very simple way of thinking it. State of consciousness is your mental equivalence, the thoughts you think, the manner in which you communicate, your words, your text, whatever, however you communicate. Sign language, doesn't matter. Songs, doesn't matter. Smoke signals, doesn't matter. However you are communicating, your emotions and your feelings and your actions. All of this is a representation of your state of consciousness. And it's easy to see what is my state of consciousness? Let me look at what's going on in my life. If I find myself constantly in arguments, constantly at odds, constantly at strife, constantly worried, constantly afraid, then let me look at my state of consciousness. Let me look at my mental equivalence. What do I think? What am I talking about? What do I feel deeply? And then what am I doing? Breathe and let that sink in. Because the moment we understand that all the world is a stage, and for those of you who may not be Shakespeare buffs, you may not know that this comes from Shakespeare. All the world is a stage, and all of the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his lifetime plays many parts. All the world is a stage. All of life is this opportunity to step out and live as the very incarnation of the divine, which we're always doing. Even when we don't realize it, we are, because there's always a mental equivalent, which means we are always involved in this thing called life. Question is, are we out there with a state of consciousness, a mental equivalent that is in alignment with love, divine power, wisdom, creativity, or a mental equivalent that is in alignment with lack, scarcity, pain, trauma, othering, xenophobia, etc.? Because we cannot escape this. There is not a time when we cannot be, where we can ungod ourselves. Because to ungod myself would mean that there has to be a me separate from it. And if I am ungodding myself, then there's going to be two. There's me, and it doesn't work that way. You cannot ungod yourself. You cannot undivine yourself. You can deny it. You can choose not to go on stage. You can choose not to, quote unquote, play the role, the divine role of life. You can choose. And yet you are still playing a role because you cannot get out of, you cannot escape. So if I can't escape, then what is my real deep invitation? At a deeper level, if we think about the song from the Birds, to everything, turn, turn. Okay, what am I turning? There is a season, turn, turn. What am I turning? Think of, I lift my eyes, right? I lift my eyes to the hills. I raise my consciousness to that which I understand is life itself. There is only one mind, and that mind is God. And so rather than allowing my vision to be downtrodden, I turn my gaze, I turn my consciousness, I turn my focus to the truth of my being. And when we do that, we are far more empowered to live our lives on purpose, according to being in alignment with God. Dr. Holmes says, if you think of life as flowing through your every action, say what? Would you say, Ernie? Think of your life as flowing through your every action. Wow. We don't like, remember, compartmentalize. We like to separate, and this is not, and that is not. If there is only one life, and that life is fill in the blank, and that life is your life right now, then when you wash dishes, life is flowing through that action. When you are in the bathroom, life is flowing through. I mean, other things are flowing, but life is flowing through your every action. When you are washing the car, shopping, when you are in traffic, when you are fussing and cussing, when you are whatever the action is, life is present. It has to be. So he goes on to say, you will soon discover that the things you give your attention to are quickened with new energy. New energy, because where you put your focus, it's like the observer effect in quantum mechanics. When you observe, what you observe changes. Life is always moving. Life is always flowing. Where are you putting your attention? Where are you putting the energy of the divine? Breathe. In the grand scope of this thing called theater, lights, camera, action, oftentimes you talk about, how to develop a character. And today we're going to, for a moment, I want you to think about what does it mean to write the character that is your life? How do you rewrite? Because there may be aspects of your life that you don't necessarily like. They happen, yes. And yet, I was molested. I was raped. I don't particularly like that that happened in my life. So I get to rewrite, meaning I get to choose right here and now my story arc. I get to choose, and arc is going to be an acronym in a moment. I get to choose how I show up, not based upon what that is, but based upon what I am, based upon who I am. I get to rewrite my story, not doing the victim thing, not playing that game, because my arc is active realization of consciousness. I know that there is only one mind, and that mind is God, and that mind is infinite. That mind is wise because it is wisdom itself. That mind is creative, and that mind is my mind now. So, why would I use the power of God, the focus of God, the attention of God to put it on? Oh, in 1817, when I was 4, this horrendous thing happened to me. Oh, woe is me. To which the practitioners say, it's an experience. You experienced it. It's a condition. Yes. When did it happen? When you were 4. How old are you now? 57. Do you want to still live in that condition, or do you want a new realization that is active? What what do I have to do? You have to be willing to change. Do what? Have to be willing to change? Yes, you have to be willing to rewrite your story, to tell a different story. I'm not sure that I really want to do that. Well, when you are, give me a call for a prac session and we can talk. But can't you just pray for me now? Yes, I can pray, but unless you are ready, willing, and able to really surrender your story, you're not going to receive the truth that I am going to speak. Active realization of consciousness and understanding that this thing called life, because oftentimes we think of our lives as I'm born, I'm middle aged, and I die. We think of life as having a beginning, a middle, and an end. This thing called life, God, has no beginning, middle, or end, which means you don't either. Now, in life, there are reading a book. There is a cover, there is the pages in between, and there is an end cover. So there's a beginning and a middle and end. There are books with chapters. There are movies and prequels and trilogies and series. And yet, when we are talking about this thing called God, this thing called life, there is no beginning, middle, or end. So it does not matter your age. There's only now. And what you are is an infinite and eternal incarnation of the divine, which means when this chapter of this body is surrendered and relinquished, life, we believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent, right? We believe in the eternality, the immortality, and the continuity of the individual soul, forever and ever expanding. We believe in our own soul, our own spirit, and our own destiny, for we understand that the life of all is God. These are in our Declaration of Principles, our we believe statements. This thing called life is forever. So let's stop telling the old story of and start telling a new story arc of an active, realized consciousness that I am the divine. And what I am is infinite, eternal, and ever expanding. I am open at the top and the bottom. I have no need to vilify the darkness. I have no need to fear the light. I embody and I embrace my divine spiritual magnificence. As Emerson says, don't be too timid and squeamish about your actions. All of life is an experiment, and the more experiments you make, the better your life will be. Experiment, sing, dance, paint, tell jokes, laugh, love, hug, whatever it is, experiment with this thing called life. Experiment and play and engage in the adventure. Because so often we get bogged down by the roles that we are, the roles that we are, the roles that we have been indoctrinated into believing about ourselves. Being a mother means this, ABC. Being a boss or an employer means LMNOP. Being black means, being white means, being 45 means, being 75 means. We have all of these rules about the roles that these things, let it go. Let all of it go. If it binds you, it is not life affirming. If it frees you, then it is life affirming. So, yes, play the role of mother and be free. Play the role of employer and be free. Play the role of LGBTQ individual and be free. Whatever the role, play it, experiment, explore, and live out loud. So, if I were to ask you, what roles do you play? What roles do you play in your family? Because we have roles. Ram Dass one time said, if you ever want to know how enlightened you are, spend a weekend with your family. What role do you play in the family? What role do you play with your circle, in your circle of friends? You have a role. Are you the leader? Are you the follower? Are you the quiet one? What is your role? What about your role when it comes to your place of work? provided that you are not retired. And if you are retired, then what role do you play in your place of retirement? Whatever that means. You're sailing, you're surfing, you're skiing. What role do you play in that activity? What role do you play in your spiritual community? I play the role of practitioner. What does that mean? I play the role of senior minister. What does that mean? I play the role of hospitality chair. What does that mean? Because you get to determine versus letting someone tell you what you, as an incarnation of God, means in that role. Because oftentimes we let someone else tell us what the role means, and then we play down rather than saying, yes, I am a licensed practitioner, and these are the requirements. I'm going to go above and beyond. I'm going to live even more out loud than this box is willing to. I'm going to go so far and so far and so far beyond that there is no box. Breathe. Because ultimately, this is a question of what role do you play in your life? What role do you play in your life? Breathe. Because if we're not aware of what role we're playing in our lives, then we're not going to truly be able to live out loud. In other words, we're not going to be able to be authentic. We're not going to be able to be real. And being real and being authentic does not mean we sugarcoat. Being within the shadow, remember when I said not too long ago, being open at the top and open at the bottom? Being open at the bottom is where you say, yes, I have experienced trauma, and I am working through the process of healing. I don't let that ungod me. It's both and. I understand who and what I am. I understand the experience, and I am doing. Does it mean I see a therapist? Maybe. Does it mean I see a practitioner? Maybe. Does it mean I do some form of somatic work or acupuncture or Reiki or whatever it is? Maybe, because that's for each of us to determine. But what it means is I no longer need to operate from a place that says, this is all that I am. I no longer need to operate from a place that says, I grew up in a household where everyone drank and I was abused in an alcoholic family, which means I am this. Because it doesn't mean I am that. It means I experienced it. It means I felt the conditions of and the experiences of, yes. And over here, there is also the ultimate truth of, what am I? I am the divine incarnated. So what is my invitation to do with the trauma, with the pain, with the shadow, with the hatred, with the bigotry, with the xenophobia, with the homophobia, with all of that? What is my invitation? As Larry Merchant says, the invitation is to follow the wisdom of the great actor James Cagney. Hit your mark, meaning be where you are and be powerfully there. Look the other person in the eye. The eye is the window to the soul. Be present and tell the truth. Be transparent, be open, and be honest. There is no need to hide ourselves. Breathe. Because in this idea of hiding, we oftentimes vilify the mask and make the mask a bad thing. The mask is not necessarily a bad thing. Is it life affirming or is it life denying? It can be either or. And the question is, if I am wearing a mask, why am I wearing the mask? For example, there were times when years ago when I lived in the closet, that was a mask. Now the question is, why? Because there are many people who are in the closet literally to save their lives, because to come out would endanger their safety. So the mask in and of itself is not a bad thing. The meta meaning, remember we talked about the meta meaning before? The meta meaning is, what is the significance for the mask? Is it for protection? Is it to hide? Is it to give us the ability to go into the trauma and into the darkness and into the ER to do the operation, to do the whatever it is in order to move through the process of healing. Breathe. Because if we're not willing to do that, then we're going to continue to other and push in resistance rather than really anchoring ground in the spiritual teaching and understand who and what we are, while also, it's both hands, while also doing the work to show up courageously and boldly, to shine your light. Breathe. Because remember that Rumi said it is the cracks where the light gets in. It is the cracks where the light gets out. So this isn't about avoiding the cracks. It's not about trying to be crackless. It's about understanding that the cracks don't define you. Marianne Williamson says it is our deepest fear. Our deepest fear is that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Why would this be the case? Because to whom much is given, much is required, which simply means you are God incarnating. And each one of us is responsible for the way we use our quote unquote godly gifts, godly talents, skills, and abilities effectively. How are we stewarding our divinity? With great power comes great responsibility because you are the universe incarnating. You are more powerful than you can imagine, and you are responsible for how you use that power. Moment by moment, thought by thought. How are you showing up in the world? Breathe. Dr. Holmes says, as you learn to release all your burdens, pause, to the right action of God, you will find that everything falls into place. Now, what is he referring to as all your burdens? That's for each of us to determine. But the important thing is the right action of God ultimately means the flow state. How are we stepping into the space of flow so that healing, so that our true divine power is present rather than the story of? Because it's easy to fall into the story and be stuck in the story. Breathe. Eric Butterworth says, there are no duplicates in the creation. Every snowflake, every blade of grass, every grain of sand, a unique design. In the same way, there has never been anyone, nor will there ever be anyone just like you. You are a unique expression of the creative energy of the universe, focused eternally as you. Yes, you are the divine original. And the divine intent active as you has one desire: to express expansively and creatively its unique to express expansively and creatively its uniqueness as the perfect idea it is in infinite mind. This is your spiritual destiny. See, it doesn't matter, because what we try to do is compare ourselves. There's Batman, and yet there are various incarnations of Batman, and each incarnation is a unique and different one. There is God, and there are various incarnations of God, and each one is a unique, individualized expression. We have no need to try to be like someone else. If we want to truly live our best lives, if we want to heal the world, if we want to truly create the beloved community, in other words, a world that works for all, we must not only know our quote unquote human roles and responsibilities, but also our divine roles and responsibilities as God incarnating. Wherever we are right now, hit the mark, tell the truth, be it, and live it. And so as we anchor in this thing called prayer, we anchor recognizing the isness and allness of the divine. We anchor recognizing that this breath right here and right now is the only breath we can breathe. And being present right here and right now, knowing that God is all there is, knowing that right where we are, the center of God is, then we know that no matter what is going on in our individual lives or in the world, there is a power and a presence. As Holmes said, there is a power greater than I am, greater than you are, and you can use it. And I understand that to mean we can't help but to use it. That power and that presence is ever present and ever powerful right now in each of our lives. We are always using it. So we get to choose how to steward it, how to use it, how to use it to heal, how to use it to evolve, how to use it to transform and transmogrify and transmute this entire planet and the entire collective consciousness so that more and more people understand what love is, what compassion is, what unity consciousness is, so that they understand their own Christ consciousness, their own Buddha nature. Because what we are seeing is dis-ease and illness in the consciousness of the collective, because they don't know. But right here and right now, we do. And so we anchor in this awareness, and knowing that the law says, yes, we anchor in this awareness that transforms. We anchor in this awareness because there is nothing that needs to be healed, only truth to be revealed. So we reveal the truth of our own being. We reveal the truth of each individual person's divine expression. And in that revelation of truth, the opportunity of healing shows up in all of the possible ways that it can show up. The law says yes. We breathe, we receive, and with gratitude, we allow it to be what it is, answered prayer. And so it is. Namaste.
Ah, what a beautiful, beautiful talk. Thank you. I have loved Light Within the Shadows this whole month. The topics have been so interesting, and what a way to close it with you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.